Constraints, I guess, are incredibly controversial because local communities, I know this, feel that they really haven't been consulted around this issue, although there have been millions of meetings. And to this end, I'd like to introduce Jan Beer to you. Jan has been involved in water politics for a long, long time. I first came across Jan in Plug the Pipe way back when. So she's a not a dairy farmer, a beef farmer, who has lived on the Goulburn and Yea rivers and pretty well all of her life. So she's representing today the Upper Goulburn River Catchment Association, and that encompasses from the Eildon Weir down to Traul. Okay, I'm just going to mumble that and I'll get it out. And she's a member of the Mid-Goulburn Technical Advisory Committee for a number of years and who was advising the MDBA on constraints.
So I'll be speaking mainly on the Upper Goulburn catchment. But you heard what Tony Burke said. It wasn't really feasible after 2,750. So the constraint strategies, in my opinion, and those of the farmers in the upper catchment, are neither feasible nor achievable, have failed all guideline evaluation criteria, and cannot deliver the 450 and should be abandoned, as should the hydro queues, which is now the new name for piggybacking. Due to potential severe flooding impacts in the Upper Goulburn catchment, as explained many, many times by landowners, we have seen the proposed environmental flood flows under a constraint strategy reduced from 40,000 megs per day to now 20,000 megs per day in channel at Shepparton. The last information we as a community were given was in 2016, January, on environmental flows, that the frequency would increase to 7 to 8 flood events per year, flood events every 10 years, with a duration of 5 days at Shepparton from July to November. Even when flows are restricted to in-channel flows, landowners have grave concerns that due to the inability to accurately predict tributary inflows in our steep upper catchment and overcome river flow time lag, the proponents have been forced to propose releasing environmental water from Eildon Weir and piggyback them on top of high tributary flows. To do this means releasing flows from Eildon 6 to 7 days in advance of forecast high rainfall and high tributary flows. This is fraught with danger for all of us downstream and will lead to tragedy due to the very fast rising upstream tributaries. The Victorian State Minister, Water Minister Lisa Neville, has previously publicly stated all Goulburn flows will now be in-channel to top a bank, no flooding of private property, no easements. In relation to the 450, no further recovery of water due to severe social and economic impacts. If Victoria stands by this statement, this means it is simply not possible to deliver the 450 gigalitres upwater and attempt to achieve flows of 60 to 80,000 at the South Australian border. The decision to proceed with recovering a further 450 in constraints in order to deliver greater volumes of environmental water downstream was based on no evidence whatsoever that the channel restrictions in the 4 major river stream systems or the multitude of other constraints throughout the basin could in actual fact be relaxed and the proposed flows physically delivered. Regardless of this, under the threat of Supreme Court action by South Australia against the federal government, constraints in the 450 passed into legislation. The stark reality is the theory of constraints, whereby whatever obstruction is preventing the system from achieving a higher output is removed, when applied to river systems and the vagaries of nature, simply cannot work due to the hundreds of constraints within each key focus area, which are all interdependent, not only in their own area and river system, but on all downstream areas as well. Some of these myriad constraints or obstructions are the natural physical landscape, topography, river channel, the chokes, the river travel time, the run of river losses, attenuation evaporation losses, the flat, hot, arid terrain, and a few facts for you. The Murray at the confluence with the Goulburn is still 1992 kilometres. from the Murray mouth and a mere 124.9 metres above sea level. At Albury, the stream gradient of the Murray is 125 millimetres or 5 inches per kilometre down to Wentworth. And once the Murray enters the drowned estuary of Lake Alexandrina, the waters creep to the sea with a fall of 1 inch per mile. Figure that one out. Inability to coincide Upper Goulburn tributary flows with those downstream, lack of the necessary perfect forecasting of rainfall stream flows runoff in an unpredictable Upper Goulburn catchment. Flow duration, paucity of real-time telemetry stream flow gauges. 57% of the Goulburn catchment from Ilton to Trawool is ungauged. Legislative requirement that states there must be no adverse social or economic impacts. Landowners in the Upper Goulburn, Mid-Murrumbidgee, Mid-Murray have clearly stated they will not negotiate easements. The Victorian State Water Minister, the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder, the Office of the PM have all stated they will not intentionally flood private property without consent, nor will land be forcibly acquired. The Assistant Water Minister, Anne Ruston, stated, "The federal government will not be funding any of the activities of the state government in this space if the conditions for landowners are such they do not wish us to proceed. That safety mechanism goes without saying, no matter how far down the track we go in trying to achieve the outcomes." The MDBA surely have to be a kangaroo loose in the top paddock if they believe over a period of several months, and that is the time it takes for this water to flow to the end of the system, they have the ability to manipulate flows from the upstream catchment in at least 3 of the 4 major river systems, coincide releases from the major dams, piggyback them on top of high tributary flows, deliver these downstream to eventuate in flows over the South Australian border of specifically 60 to 80,000 megalitres per day for a sustained period of 5 to 6 weeks, with at least 75,000 megs going over the barrages to scour the sand from the Murray mouth, and then try to avoid wind station strong southerlies. All this while incurring no adverse economic, environment or social impacts as required under legislation. As Neil Motton, a geologist, explained several years ago, we have a mature river system coming off a 200 to 600 million year old continent where the erosional nature of the continent has reached a low energy system. As always, these systems have barrier estuaries clogged by years of sedimentation. Sediments held in suspension by freshwater systems invariably drop out of suspension when they hit the saltwater interface of the sea, thus creating these clogged estuaries. Thank you.
It's almost like the lack of lights is a metaphor for how many people feel about the constraints management strategy consultation today. A lot of people feel they've been kept in the dark.